Would you pray with me, please? Oh God, we start a new year. Not a calendar year of the world, but the church year. Wrapped around the birth of your Son. As we go through this season of Advent, this season of waiting for that birth, open our souls anew to the hope and the joy and the promises, the love and the faith and all the other things that we talk about during this season. Show us again the joy of holding a baby found in a manger in Bethlehem. Open our hearts to your word and proclaim them from my mouth through Jesus, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. As we start this season of Advent, you'll notice that we've done something different with your bulletin. You all like that? How many of you, like me, I rub my finger over because you can almost see the crayon in letters. And I thought, wow, man, my secretaries were busy this week. They hand-colored every one of them. But we're going to talk about angels. Matter of fact, today at the hanging of the greens, right after this service, there will be a special tree set up in the back, and you're invited to bring an angel ornament in to share with the congregation during this season and hang it on that tree. All got that in your mind. But before I talk about angels, I kind of need to take a poll. And the question is, how many of you believe in angels? Quite a few of you. If I ask the other question, then I'd see the rest of the hands go up. Who doesn't believe in angels? And there's some of those. And some of us are kind of like right in the middle. We haven't decided yet. So I want to just educate you a little bit this morning before we launch into this series of sermons on angels. I wholeheartedly believe, and the main reason I believe is because guess what, folks? They're in this book. You can go to the Old Testament and find angels, can you not? Like the angels that appeared to Abraham and told him and Sarah were going to have a baby. The angels that appeared to Abraham and had dinner with him as they were on their way to Sodom and Gomorrah to do a little recognizance for God. Let's talk about the angel that Jacob wrestled with that made him lame. Or his dream of the stairway between earth and heaven, and what was going up and down those stairs? Angels. They're throughout that Old Testament. And guess what? They're in the New Testament. When Jesus was in the desert being tempted, even the devil said, just jump off the top of the building and the angels will catch you. The devil believes in angels, as well he should, because according to this book, he was one. Jesus himself said, remember that passage where he's got the little kid on his knee and he's chastising the disciples for telling him to shoo and go away? And he says, don't you understand that each and every one of them has a guardian angel in heaven watching over them? You'll find angels in the creation story, and you'll find angels at the very end at Revelation in that book. I believe. Now, I don't believe that they are the flying white beauties with large wings and playing harps. That's in artwork. That's not in the Bible. Matter of fact, the Bible tells you pretty much that they are spiritual beings created by God to be His messengers. to sit around his throne. And there's different stages of angels, and we'd be here all day if we started to break them all down like cherubs and seraphim and all that. We're not here for that. I just want you to understand there are angels. If you wake up in the middle of the night and there's an angel hovering over your bed, flapping its wings, playing a harp, it's probably not an angel of God. It means you ate bad chili before you went to bed tonight. But I believe that angels exist. And this year, during this series of Advent, I'm going to show you the different stories of angels in the story of the birth of Jesus Christ and the messages that they brought to humanity. Those messages just weren't for the people that are in the narrative of Jesus. Those messages are meant for us even today. And I'm going to start with the message that Gabriel brought to the priest Zechariah. It was all about believing. All about believing. Let me share with you that story at the beginning of the narrative of Christmas. Luke chapter 1, starting with verse 5. When Herod was king of Judea, there was a Jewish priest named Zechariah. He was a member of the priestly order of Abijah, and his wife Elizabeth was also from the priestly line of Aaron. Zechariah and Elizabeth were righteous in God's eyes, careful to obey all of the Lord's commandments and regulations. They had no children because Elizabeth was unable to conceive, and they were both very old. One day, Zechariah was serving God in the temple, for his order was on duty that week. As was the custom of the priest, he was chosen by lot to enter the sanctuary of the Lord and burn incense. While the incense was being burned, a great crowd stood outside praying. While Zechariah was in the sanctuary, an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing to the right of the incense altar. Zechariah was shaken and overwhelmed with fear when he saw him. But the angel said, "Don't be afraid, Zechariah. God has heard your prayer. Your wife Elizabeth will give you a son, and you are to name him John. You will have great joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great in the eyes of the Lord. He must never touch wine or other alcoholic drinks. He will be filled with the Holy Spirit, even before his birth. And he will turn many Israelites to the Lord their God. He will be a man with the spirit and power of Elijah. He will prepare the people for the coming of the Lord. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and he will cause those who are rebellious to accept the wisdom of the godly." Zechariah said to the angel, "How can I be sure this will happen? I'm an old man now, and my wife is also well along in years." Then the angel said, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the very presence of God. It was he who sent me to bring you this good news. But now, since you didn't believe what I said, you will be silent and unable to speak until the child is born. For my words will certainly be fulfilled at the proper time." Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah to come out of the sanctuary, wondering why he was taking so long. When he finally did come out, he couldn't speak to them. Then they realized from his gestures and his signs that he must have seen a vision in the sanctuary. When Zechariah's week of service in the temple was over, he returned home. Soon afterward, his wife Elizabeth became pregnant and went into seclusion for 5 months. "How kind the Lord is," she exclaimed. "He has taken away my disgrace of having no children." So the narrative of the birth of Jesus Christ starts with a couple of good people. The priest Zechariah and his wife, who actually was from a whole family of priests, Aaron. If you can find the line of Aaron, goes all the way back to the time of Moses, when the priesthood was started. And we know that they were good because it tells us they were righteous. They lived according to the rules of God. They did what they could do to please God. We also know that they had one problem. Elizabeth couldn't conceive. And in that culture, in that day, that was a disgrace. Because the rest of the people would have looked at Elizabeth and went, well, you must have done something pretty bad. Because they figured the only time a woman couldn't conceive was because of a sin they had committed, or their husband or someone. So they weren't happy about that. And obviously we know from what the angel said that they had been praying about it. So the week that we pick up on here, it's Zechariah's team's turn in the temple. And they choose lots, pull straws, cast dice, whatever they did to do it. And it was Zechariah's turn to go into the sanctuary and be with God and light the incense. Now, I want you all to catch something else there. While he's doing that, did you see where there was a large group of people outside praying? So next Sunday when I'm here at 6, you'll all be out in the parking lot praying, correct? Okay, do it from your beds. If you're even awake at 6. They believed in what was going on inside that temple. They believed that God heard their prayers. And it says while he's doing that, he looks up, and there to the right of the altar was an angel. Now, about every story of angels you read this book, mankind reacts in the same way. They're scared. Matter of fact, Zechariah is not only scared, it says he was overwhelmed with fear. Now, I take that to mean that's more than somebody jumping out the door yelling boo at you. I take that like his knees are knocking, his teeth are chattering, and he probably couldn't speak for a moment because he thought, well, God must be upset with me. I'm out of here. And the angel replied about the same way that every angel story replies throughout this book. Calm down. Be not afraid. And most of the places you'll see it translated, fear not. And the angel tells Zechariah, he says, God heard your prayers. God heard your prayers, and I'm here to tell you that your wife is going to conceive, and you're going to have a son, and you're supposed to name him John, which means in Hebrew, folks, the Lord is gracious. The Lord is gracious. And all of a sudden, evidently, Zechariah's fear went away. Because he looked at the angel and said, yeah, right. Did you see how many candles were on my last birthday? I'm well past the age of fathering children, and my wife is well past the age of conceiving children. Yeah, right. Our faces have more wrinkles than the desert has sand dunes. How can this, you can tell me that, but how would I ever think for a moment to believe it? How could I ever think for a moment? That it would happen. And here's where I see Gabriel getting a little indignant. Because if you read this in the Bible yourself, or if you saw it on the screen, we're talking like a bunch of exclamation points all at the same time. And as soon as Zechariah voices his disbelief, the angel says, I am Gabriel. I stand in the very presence of God. It was He who sent me to bring you this good news. In other words, who are you to question the boss? This came from God. You're questioning God's revelation? You're not believing what God says He can do? Well, tell you what, Zechariah, you just shut up now and you're not talking again until that boy's born. Maybe then you'll have a little respect. Maybe then you'll believe when you're called to believe. Maybe then you'll believe that everything is possible with the power of the Almighty. Who are you to disbelieve? I mean, I can almost translate that in my way of saying, how dare you? How dare you disbelieve it? You go from being scared to being sassy. Can't you just imagine Gabriel going like, maybe you should have stayed scared. You might not have got in trouble. And we know from the rest of the story that just what Gabriel said would happen, happened. She did conceive John, who was John the Baptist, who was to prepare the way for the coming of Christ. And this is actually a fulfillment of one of the prophecies. If you read later on in the book, you'll see as you get close to the crucifixion story that the disciples and others questioned Jesus like, well, didn't the Bible or didn't our prophets say that Elijah had to come back before the Messiah could come? Did you catch in there where it says he would have the power and the spirit of Elijah? Folks, that's the fulfillment of that prophecy. Right there in that story at the beginning of the birth story, they're already fulfilling the prophecies for the death story. You think God knows what He's doing? Christmas is the season of belief, isn't it? You know, before Halloween, I was walking through stores and there were already Christmas decorations up. Sometimes I think there ought to be like a season police where you can cite people for violating the seasons. There ought to be like jail time involved when you've got Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas all displayed at the same time. But it's belief season. Every place that I go and there's Christmas decorations, you see one of those wonderful signs, don't you? It's got the jolly red guy on it, or it's got snowflakes or a snowman or something, and it says simply, believe. Or, I believe. Now here's what I really want to talk to you about a little bit this morning. So let me get this right. We believe, and we get our kids to believe, in an obese, immortal man who dresses all in red. I'm not going to use the name so you can quit worrying now. Who flies around the world and visits every house in the universe in one night. And in each one of those houses, he leaves a little package that comes out of an empty bag but that has no bottom, that's made by a bunch of pointy-eared little people who live in a winter wasteland that's not even on the map. I'm supposed to believe that. And while he's doing all that, in each of the houses he eats cookies and milk so that the poor reindeers got a heavier load going back to that place than they had when they left. No wonder he's overweight. Do you ever wonder if he takes... No. No, do you ever wonder, does he take cholesterol medicine? And I have no problem if you want to believe that. I have no problem that our children are raised to believe that. I have no problem with it at all. But my question is this, don't you think the other story is just as important to teach people about? Don't you think that if they can believe that, they ought to be able to believe that God put on human skin and was born as a baby in a stable surrounded by a bunch of stinky animals? Don't you think that they're capable of believing in shepherds coming to visit and choirs of angels singing in the sky and wise men bringing presents? Do we spend as much time in this season training them about that as we do about the other? Do you believe? Do you believe that that baby grew up to die on a cross so that we could be forgiven? And we could be just as immortal as that other character. Do you believe? To believe in Christmas means that we believe that that child born on that first Christmas day was a fulfillment of the prophecy of Isaiah that you heard read this morning. It's to believe that He is born to us Not just rich people, not just Democrats, not just Republicans, not just any other demographic. He was born for us, for each and every person that was ever born and ever will be born. Us. Do you believe that? You believe that the time will come that He will rule the world. He alone will be King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Do you believe? Do you believe that once He establishes that rule that there's going to be peace with no end? It will be for all of eternity. All the garbage we put up with will be gone. Do you believe that this God, this Jesus, when He comes back and establishes that kingdom, and you pray it every day when you say the Lord's Prayer, don't you? His kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Do you believe that when He establishes that kingdom, we'll quit getting hung up on things like skin color and what country you came from? And you can take that right on down the line of all the other things that we want to talk about and look down our noses at people for today. Do you believe that that's why that baby was born? And until that day happens, if you believe that, then you have a wonderful counselor. You have somebody that you can pray to and take all of your problems to and be comforted by and know that He listens and that He cares. You can have a mighty God who can solve any problem that you face in this life. You have an everlasting Father who promised us from the very beginning, right along with the angel stories, I will never leave you nor forsake you for all of eternity. And when you grasp all of that, when you finally get all of that into your head, you'll find the Prince of Peace. Because no matter what happens, you'll stay calm. You'll weather the storm. And you'll know that, or as I tell people, I read the book, I know how it all is. We'll be okay. That's a peace that comes from believing. When you believe, you finally realize it's not about a sign with snowflakes on it. It's about a cross with blood on it. That's what it means to believe. This Christmas, open your heart to the messages of the angels who proclaim the coming of your Lord and your Savior. This Christmas, as we look at all of these messages, as we sing about the birth of Jesus Christ each week, as we go through this blessed season of waiting we call Advent, take the time to examine what you believe. Don't just take it at face value. Think about it. Roll it around in your head and your heart. Let it take root. Let it mean something again. Then share that belief with somebody that doesn't have it yet. And live your life in accordance with the messages God sent by, or the messages sent by God through His angels and through the birth of His Son. Amen. Amen.